it's really rare, I think, in life to be able to do what you do best and what you love at the same time. I went to El Salvador in the midst of a civil war. That was my first professional job, because basically I made the decision, I'm gonna play pro basketball, law school can wait. Back then, they were like, take your skinny butt to law school. I arrived in Brisbane. They put me up in the city, and Pete, on day 2, I said I'm never leaving.
Welcome back to another episode of The Huddle, and it is a very special episode. It's Heritage Round in the NBL, so this is a Heritage Huddle, and I thought, you know what? We need to hear from one of the best the NBL has ever seen. Derek Rucker joins me for the Heritage Huddle. Ruck, I'm looking forward to this because you are a very popular name in the NBL, with especially all the media work that you've done now. But for maybe the new fans out there, we've got to shed some light on how you became one of the all-time greats in the NBL, and I'm looking forward to this memory lane.
Wow. Okay. Well, thanks for having me, firstly, and it's an exciting time, and just to be in this space right now with a growing league, and not only within Australia but globally. You share in the media stuff. You know how exciting it is. You know how challenging it is. So I really love it, and it's the sport we love, and to be able to do this every day is really a blessing.
It's so much fun to unpack everything that you've been through in the NBL and everything you've contributed to in the NBL and the amazing history that is this league. When you sit here right now as part of the media space, commentary, analysis, all the other things that you do, having known where you've come from, having played, naturalising in Australia, all of that, what stands out for you as you sit right here?
I think it's just the people that I've been able to meet and the relationships, and just being able to be honest and authentic with who I am as a person and let that go out to the public via basketball, and even through my own business, Derek Rucker Basketball, where I work with a lot of kids and helping them get better. But it's really rare, I think, in life to be able to do what you do best and what you love at the same time. And I'm able to cover a lot of different spaces within the industry. So it's just fun, man. Like, I just love being happy with what I do.
You've been here for a very long time now, as I said, and we'll break down all of those pieces because there's some fun stories in there, no doubt. But let's go way back to growing up in DC, a long time ago. But what do you remember, and when did basketball even begin for you?
Well, my dad was in the NFL, so I grew up in a football family. Gridiron is my first love. American football was all I was about, and my parents had me at a really young age. They were 18, so I was able to be in football, in NFL locker rooms from a very young age. And I think that gave me a real competitive desire, and a lot of my friends now have grown up from my childhood, and they're actually big-time NFL people, and it's really great to watch their journey and be inspired with what they do, whether they're coaches or media people in America. But I didn't get into basketball probably until I was like 6 or 7, and my dad just kind of realized that my frame was not going to be suitable for the NFL.
At what point did you realize, because as we see now, we see a lot of the NBL guys with their kids and they're on the floor after the games. At what point do you remember having that first thought of like, oh, my dad, like, this is legit. I'm professional American football, NFL. That's my old man.
I think when I was probably about 8 or 9, and I would go, he played for the New England Patriots, and we go up to Foxborough, and there would be 60,000, 70,000 fans, and I was, I'd be out on the field playing with players, and you just take it for granted and accept that it's normal because you don't know any other way. I don't know any other life than sport, and trying to be successful and being around a group, a team environment where everybody's trying to thrive, like that really drives me and pushes my buttons.
Throughout all that growing up in the childhood, and we'll touch on your college career because it was an exceptional one as well, but did it ever occur to you that playing professional basketball, which would have been a goal of yours, could lead you to moving across the other side of the world for a good?
Like all American high schoolers or kids growing up, I had dreams of playing in the NBA, and I knew that it was going to be challenging because the way players were evaluated when I was coming up, it had a lot to do with size. You know, in this era, I would have been a lot more valuable as a player because of my style of play. But back then, it was really hard. It was really hard to win college coaches over. And let's be honest, in 10th, 11th grade, I was probably 5'9", like 135 pounds. I was really, really small, and my parents started me in school early, so I was actually 2 years below my grade. So I started year one, I was 4.
When you look back at before coming to a college decision and working through that, have being smaller than the rest of all the other athletes who are competing maybe for a high school spot or other parts of basketball before committing to a college, what are you proud of most that you went through in that time?
I think the academic side. I went to really challenging high schools, and I went to high school and to college to be a lawyer. That's what I wanted to do. And I had dreams of going to Georgetown University to be a lawyer and get involved in politics and do all that type of stuff. And I just didn't believe that Mother Nature was going to do what she needed to do with this body to get me in a position where I could play professional basketball. I just didn't think it was going to happen. I remember going to basketball camps in the summer. You know, I was in year 10, year 11, and they'd ask you for your height and weight, and I would always lie. And I remember one year I put in, I was maybe 5'8", Pete, and I put in 5'10", 150 pounds. I remember handing it, and the lady read it, and as I walk off, I remember her laughing at me and saying to her sidekick, "Look at this kid lying about his age and weight." But that's how self-conscious I was about it, and eventually I did grow somewhat.
The decision to go to Davidson, you talked about trying to do everything you could to impress college coaches at the time. Tell us how that came about, and again, when you finally commit and you sign a national letter of intent to go to a Division I college, what's it like?
So because of the academic achievements and because I had done really well in the classroom, I had Ivy League schools after me, and it was more the academic institutions that really wanted me, but some of those schools always weren't good at basketball. We know the trade-off is it isn't as severe as it was back then. So I wanted to go to Columbia University in Manhattan, and I was pretty committed to going there. The University of Iowa also showed a lot of interest, and they were actually the first ever school to show interest in me. And I was actually recruited to replace Steve Carfino.
Oh, wow.
So I was going to be Steve Carfino's replacement, but what happened was a scholarship that was intended for me, another kid stepped in and made a decision prematurely and took the last scholarship. So Iowa put me on to Columbia, they put me on to Davidson, and they put me on to Stanford. And I decided after visiting Davidson that that was the place for me. And they had a point guard position that was open, and I felt that I could play there from the jump. And so I elected to go there. Signing that national letter of intent is really, it's a nervous moment. And I go through it now with a lot of players that I work with through Derek Rucker basketball, as I tell them, it's exciting getting all these offers, but it's harrowing. It is nerve-wracking trying to make the decision. Where do I want to go? And for me, it was a lot easier because basically it came down to two choices, Davidson and Stanford, and I took Davidson. Ironically, had I taken Stanford, I would have wound up playing with Andrew Vlahoff.
Oh, wow, so it would have come full circle for sure.
Right.
What are the visits like back then? Because we see a lot of visits now. It's a different, again, now I didn't get to experience it, but there's obviously NIL deals involved. I can only imagine your NIL deal would have been very nice. It had to been that around the time at Davidson, but what really sweeps you off your feet in a visit that you can remember back then?
Well, coming from a cold climate in Cleveland, Ohio, where a regular routine in the winter is shoveling a driveway, clearing the snow out of the driveway. And I remember being out there, Pete, 2-3 hours shoveling snow. We had a long driveway, and I was always telling myself, I will never, ever live in a cold climate. Once I leave this place, I'm never coming back. And when Davidson showed interest and I went down there, it was April, it was sunny, it was beautiful. And I just really liked it. The academics I knew were going to challenge me. And I decided this is where I want to be. And I can't say. Sometimes I think what would have happened if I had gone to a bigger school, but I think Davidson was a great place for me to be.
It was a fantastic place, a Hall of Famer, Jersey retired there. Some of the best performances we've seen at Davidson when you actually look in the record books. What's one of your favourite memories that you can recall from then?
I think I always doubted myself, even after I got the scholarship. And keeping in mind, my model was my dad, who was a pro athlete, had a long career in the NFL. I wanted to be in the NBA. I saw anything other than the NBA as being a failure, but yet I had these doubts because the big-time schools didn't come after me. But in December of my freshman year, I went for 31. And I remember it was against the Citadel at home, and that was the day that changed everything. And after that game, I remember thinking to myself, I'm good now. I can play this game. I still have a lot of work to do, but that was the watershed moment I felt in my career.
You're one of the unique careers where the three-point line comes into it midway through. What do you remember about that whole, was there whispers going around at the time they might put in this arc that's worth 3 points? And obviously you took very good advantage of that as well.
I did, and I understood the math. I figured out quite early, because I watched a lot of the ABA, and I watched some European basketball where they had already had the three-point line. So I started to understand the math and figure out what I needed to shoot as a trade-off to make that three-point shot attempt worthwhile. Now, my coach hated me shooting the three in college, and I used to shoot it in transition. And, you know, in 1987, that was not something that was fancied by a very conservative flex offense coach. My coach at Davidson, Bobby Hussey, he was one of the four founders of the flex offense, and he knew it in and out, and he did not want three-point shots, but I was putting them up.
You put them up at a high clip as well. And again, to be able to see it happening around the world and to realise when this comes here to college, like this is going to be something that I can take advantage of. One is doing that, but two is shooting over 45% in a season, nearly 50% from the three. When you look back at it now, it's pretty incredible.
It is, and obviously the big thing for me is the fact that Steph is behind me. Steph Curry is behind me, and you know, I didn't achieve a lot of the things that I wanted to in my career, but and not only for me, but a lot of my friends, my longtime friends at Davidson, they take great pleasure in that and, you know, supporting me throughout my career. But the three-point line, coming in halfway through it, it does make it difficult to kind of evaluate scoring.
For sure.
And we see, look, we're going through it here in the NBL with this modern 40-minute era argument against, look, everyone is really, really good. And let's just appreciate everyone for what they did in their era, because it is hard to say who's a better basketball player because the rails have shifted. And I think, like I said, we just have to just be willing to understand that everyone did the best that they could do within the parameters of how the game was played when they played it.
Yeah, well said. I'm definitely double down on that. I think we need to continue to do that. When you sit here now, and we're going to talk about your NBL journey because that's incredible as well, but I was reading a piece on Bleacher Report, the top 10 most important people in Davidson history from a couple of years ago. Coach McKillop, number one, understandably so. Steph Curry, number two. And there's some other very big names on the list. But Derek Rucker's name's in there at number 10. To think of a college that has so much history, so much success, to have your name on that list, regardless of what kind of list it is, but to be amongst them, how does that make you feel?
Tremendous. And the thing is, you never know what you're creating while you're doing it. You never know what the legacy will be when you leave, and that's why it's important. You must live with an edge, I believe, and I always have. But at the same time, you have to be mindful of the impact and how you can help others. And whether that's through the joy you bring them as a player indirectly, your direct encounters with them, and the interpersonal relationships you establish with them, that most fans, they'll carry that. While the interaction for the player or the athlete may be fleeting, for the fan, it's memorable. And I think, especially the modern day athletes, should never forget that because they encounter, this generation has it tough because they encounter so much of it. And these little interactions, everything is recorded, it spreads. And I just think, again, that ability to impact others in a positive manner, just the slightest touch can impact them significantly.
And you clearly did that at Davidson. And you mentioned the record books and Steph Curry being right there behind you. But when you're sitting there watching Davidson go on that historic run they did in the tournament, not that long ago, and then it makes people then go to the record books. And probably if they hadn't learned about Davidson, they know now and they see what you did. What's it like being a Wildcat and seeing Steph Curry, obviously what he's doing now in the NBA, but especially when he put Davidson back on the map in the tournament?
Well, his coach, Bob McKillop, and I have always had a really good relationship. And one thing I really liked about Bob is his openness and his ability to help others, to talk basketball. The guy is a savant. And when I was still team coaching, he helped me so much with constructing offenses and just learning to space the floor. He took time for me, and I wasn't one of his guys. But yet, the Davidson basketball network is so tight. You know, it's 40 years, 50 years of history for those that are still surviving. But obviously, Steph is the ringleader. But we all are tight. And I'm fortunate enough here right now to have two guys in the NBL, Sam Menenga, Hyunjung Lee, and you know, we always greet each other with the same expression, great day to be a Wildcat, and it means something to us. We feel like we are part of a very special group.
Well, you are, and in particular, you and Steph Curry, just hearing the challenges you went for, being undersized and kind of being looked over when you arrive at Davidson, and Davidson giving you something else to then go on and thrive, which you did. And I do want to talk about that next step. I mean, you mentioned the dream of wanting to get to the NBA. You had a tryout with the Cavs?
I did.
What was that like back in the time? Because we see it again now in the NBL. You get a workout, a free agent workout, maybe it's summer league, and it can be tense. Was it as tense back then or even more?
Very tense. And the hard part, Pete, is back then the veterans did all type of inappropriate stuff to you. It wouldn't go today. It wouldn't fly today.
On the court?
Everywhere. Everywhere. And it just wouldn't happen today. And that made it really tough. You had to get over that. But I played, coming out of Davidson, I played summer league with Cleveland and performed well. They told me they were bringing me into vet camp. They reneged on that. Lenny Wilkins, a Hall of Famer, was the head coach. He really liked me. He said, you just need a little bit more experience. You need to build your body up a little bit. So I went down to Central America. I went to El Salvador in the midst of a civil war. That was my first professional job. Everyone told me, don't do it, but I needed the money. I needed to play, and I was eager. I kind of bypassed the opportunity to go to law school because basically I'd made the decision, I'm going to play pro basketball. Law school can wait. And
then you're right. We see it again when people make that decision of that's the dream. You need to at least try that, and if El Salvador is the one that pops up, you've got to do it. What was that like? And then furthermore, when did you first get wind of an opportunity that could pop up in Australia?
Well, towards the end of that stint in El Salvador, we won the championship, and the league wasn't very competitive. I think I averaged 52 a game, so I clearly was not being challenged on the court. But the raw numbers were the raw numbers, and some people did find that appealing. And a former coach here and a longtime agent, Dave Doc Atkins, who spent a lot of time down in Hobart, he linked me up with the trial with the Brisbane Bullets. And Brian Curl was the head coach. And I went on a tour, a Thanksgiving tour throughout the Mid-Plains states through America, and performed very well. And I beat out Andre Lafleur for that point guard position. And yeah, got the job.
What did you know about Australia at the
Nothing.
time? I could only imagine that you're just thinking, again, even in school back then, I could imagine that everything is so centralized where you're just worried about, well, you're understanding about America, you talk about the NFL, all of that, that a country across the other side of the world, it had to be daunting.
And Pete, you lived in America. You understand the jingoism and the self-centeredness of Americans and how ignorant the average American is about the rest of the world.
Well, especially at that time too.
Exactly. And so I didn't know much about Australia at all. I was shocked that there was even a basketball league. So when the opportunity came, I took it though, because again, I just had the words of Lenny Wilkins ringing in my ear. You need to go play. You need to get stronger. You need to prove yourself. And Davidson, the NCAA scene, the mid-majors weren't given the same respect that they are now. So my numbers coming out of Davidson nowadays would probably realistically have me as a lottery pick.
For sure.
Back then, they were like, take your skinny butt to law school. I was actually told by the lead NBA scout to go to law school.
And then you end up having one of the most successful professional careers.
Chase your dreams.
In Australia. What was it like? First class flight back then?
No.
Just slumming it.
Yes, middle seat.
Wow.
You've seen all those memes now and videos about guys just staring at the screen
that was you.
For 12, 15 hours. That was me.
And when you touched down then in Australia, having not known anything about it, but just excited to play professional basketball, what were some of your memories from that first week?
I arrived in Brisbane. They put me up in the city, and Pete, on day 2, I said, I'm never leaving.
Really? You knew then that this was home?
I knew it. And I got to meet Leroy. I got to meet Andre Moore, Robert Sibley, and all the guys that would form the core of the team for the next 2 years. And I was like, I never want to leave this team. This is the city I want to be in. Obviously, it didn't work out that way, but it's kind of gone 360 for me. And I just really enjoyed it. And when I started playing and realized that Australian basketball, with respect to pace, with respect to style of play, with respect to the use of the three-point line, was so far ahead of most parts of the world, and it was a place where my skill set and my physical attributes, I felt that I could shine here. So I just enjoyed the match right away.
In that first season in particular, do you have any memory or one battle in particular that stood out that you remember for a long time?
Oh, I'm scarred. The Ricky Grace battles were outstanding, and the other day I got on the flight, and for some reason I opened YouTube, and it went to Game 3, Perth versus Brisbane Grand Final, 1990 at Brisbane Entertainment Center, a game which unfortunately we didn't win, but the wounds are there. You never forget that feeling of losing grand finals, and Ricky turned out to be a nemesis for the better part of 15 years. Great guy, unbelievable player, winner, and someone, I take great pleasure in having had the opportunity to play against those guys, Andrew and Leonard and Ricky and Shane Heal and Daryl McDonald, and there's just countless others. When you look back on it, it's not about the wins and losses necessarily. It's experiences and having had the opportunity to fail against those guys, to excel against those guys, to go out drinking with those guys, to go out and now maintain relationships with all of those guys. And that's what it's about.
And most of them are still here.
They are.
When you talk about Ricky in particular, because we see a lot of highlights, and again, we like to take fun of you and Copes going at it, you and Gazy, but from that loss to Ricky, and you talk about being a nemesis on the court, you as the competitor that I know that you are, did you circle games in the future?
Well, Ricky was winning the championships. I was kind of winning the personal awards, but Ricky was getting the banners. And while there was a healthy respect between myself and Rick, there was never a warmth between us. And whether that was, I think Rick wanted a bit of what I had in terms of personal achievements, and I wanted a lot of what he had in terms of rings and championships. So there was always this friction. And again, when we played each other, I'm never one of those guys who's like, no, I'm not looking at this matchup. This matchup means nothing to me. You better best believe when I was playing against Daryl McDonald, I was highly focused. Otherwise, he was going to eat me up. I had to pay extra attention to when I was playing against Shane Heal or Leonard Copeland. Andre LaFleur. These guys would make you look really, really bad.
Is that a part of the game that we probably don't appreciate enough now? And I guess that probably goes more to the way that the world is society, but even players as a whole, where it's okay to have these personal battles and to be able to be more transparent and open about it. Social media doesn't help the cause with all of it, but we know there's personal battles, and it's just nothing more than just trying to beat the other guy who's in your spot in that game.
Let's bring it to right now. Bryce Cotton goes for 59 points. Who was he playing against?
Breakers.
Parker Jackson Cartwright. Probably the biggest threat to his crown. You think Bryce, in the lead up to that game, wasn't taking it personally? And I'll be damned if I want to hear a star player saying, no, that doesn't matter to me, just trying to go out there and do what's best for the team. Yeah, you're trying to do that, obviously. That's a given. But you better be trying to kick that other guy's butt.
And I think the 51 points from the Brisbane Bulls the couple of weeks before was a big part of that as well. You mentioned your individual accolades. An MVP, 3 first teams, a second team, a third team All-NBL, a scoring champ, and the single game assist record. They're phenomenal to, do you think, of a basketball CV. Not many get close to a CV like that. But you also mentioned there the one thing that was missing from it. How does that make you feel overall?
Well, I lost 2 game threes. The second one against Adelaide at the Clipsal Powerhouse. And we just got done by a better team. They, I think, made 13 threes in the first half. Basically ran us off the court. I was playing for West Sydney at the time, and we had a banging lineup. But Adelaide were better on that night. And again, it's, you know what it's like. You've made big shots. You won championships. You can recreate that emotion just like that. It goes on the flip side, and it's very hard. I'm carrying that for the rest of my life. You don't. That's just something I have to live with, not winning championships. And does it change your life? Does it adversely affect your life and your prospects for future success? Not at all. Does it help? Maybe. But does it hurt? You're damn right.
You talk about that and hurting and understanding it. And as you said, I understand both sides of it from playing professionally. But when you see players win a championship for the first time, even now, and get emotional, and they get in tears, it is hard to win a championship. But having lost 2 of them in competitive series, though, you would have more appreciation of how hard it is to win a championship at any pro level than probably anybody else.
Correct. And through the media aspect of my life, I've covered a lot of championship series and grand final series over the past 25 years. And I really like to live vicariously through the winners. But also, I have a great empathy for the losing team, because I know that's a stain that you can't get out. And last year, seeing Melbourne United suffer, you know how the setup is at John Cain. We walk back to the green room, and that's right near where the Melbourne United change room is. And so to see the agony that those guys had to experience, it's tough, and it brought back a lot of old feelings. But again, to fast forward, you love to see United take that and turn it. And that's what it's about. Can you turn that displeasure, that uneasiness, into something positive?
Well, you had a lot of positive moments throughout your career, as I highlighted, and there's the individual game brilliance as well in that. Where we look at the league now, compared to some of the things that you would have experienced at Brisbane, West Sydney as well, what are you most proud of having been an integral part of the history of the league?
I like the fact that I was willing to take chances, and at West Sydney, I was the first player signed. I went to the Townsville Suns when they were struggling, and we built at both places. But in terms of records, I love the assist record. That means a lot to me. I always enjoyed helping my teammates be better, get them easier opportunities, and I loved helping people score the basketball. And hopefully that record
The rest of them are gone. The rest of them are gone some point this year.
Yeah. So I think that's a great one, and that's probably the one I'm most proud of.
And the league as a whole, the growth, we talk about where it was at 2015, 2016, when all this incredible history that you were part of looked like it could be a thing of the past. And then to bring it back and try and take it to another level worldwide like the NBL is now. Make you feel good?
Well, for guys like myself and Andrew and Leonard, let's be real. We don't know much else in our adult lives other than the NBL. I started in the NBL when I was 23. Leonard was 24, 25. Drew was 16. This league has dominated the better part of our lives. And we love it. We know it. And I think we're all so grateful of the position where the league is now, and primarily due to Larry Kesselman and what he was willing to sacrifice and what he was willing to put into the league, when I'm sure a lot of people around him were like, what are you doing? Why? But he had a vision, and wow, look where we are.
Ruck, it's so great to catch up. I'm glad we could go down memory lane for a little bit on this.
Who's always ready to team up with you. You're doing a fantastic job as well. One day, this is going to be reversed.
I've only told my story a couple of times, so maybe, mate, we appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I do, at some point, we talk about the list. Everyone wants to pick apart your list, but maybe you can do a list from back in the day, a top 15 list from back in the day. We might have to look at that for Heritage Round.
Maybe. That would be fascinating. Wow, imagine how much hate I would get.
There was social media wasn't around then, it is now. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been a Heritage Huddle, and this has been Derek Rucker.